Alpine have just shown us their brand new A522, and with two striking liveries and a lot of very interesting technical details, this was certainly a very good car launch. Let's take a look at it, shall we? Okay, so here it is, the brand new Alpine A522, and I must admit that when they launched this livery, I really didn't enjoy it, but the more and more I look at it, the more and more I like it. So I think that the addition of the BWT sponsorship was definitely a very good thing for the livery when compared to last year's, and I was one of the few that actually didn't enjoy last year's livery, but this one I enjoy a lot. Now I think that the tone of blue that they have when combined with the pink from the BWT just looks very good, and when you look at the second livery that they showed us, you can really start to appreciate some of the little details. So Alpine also showed us this all pink livery that they are going to be running for the first two races of the 2022 season. Now this is a brand new livery to celebrate their new partnership with BWT, and honestly I just think that the team of designers that they have at Alpine just nailed these liveries. I think that both of them are beautiful, and I think that it was a little bit too soon for us to have an all pink livery again in Formula 1 in another team. So overall I think that the Alpine team did a great job with the livery, and especially with the livery suiting the car shape so well, especially with this BWT sponsorship around the side pods. I think it looks very good. But now it's time to give you my first impressions of the brand new Alpine A522 as seen on the renders. So this is a picture annotated as always by Craig Scarborough, and he has seen a lot of very interesting details on the car, but for me this is one of the most stock looking cars that we have seen in the 2022 season, with the exception of two details here around the front wing and here around this floor vane, as Craig Scarborough calls it. Okay, so now let's actually take a look at the front wing on the brand new A522. So they have decided to follow the same route as some other teams, where their nose cone isn't actually touching the bottom element of the front wing. Now what this will do is it will generate a slot gap right here that will then lead the air cleanly to the underfloor of the car and to those venturi tunnels. Now from the pictures I've seen, the Alpine looks to have one of the lower wings in any of the 2022 cars, but they are trying to lead the air to the venturi tunnels through this slot gap right here and trying to raise the outboard part of the front wing in order to get clean air to the floor. But for me the most interesting thing about the A522's front wing is the way in which they are trying to produce downforce. So they are using the whole front wing as a pretty even distribution of downforce here around the BWT logo, and then they are using the outboard part of the front wing to try and generate some outwash to control the front wheel wake. Now, even though this is a pretty much the same concept as we have seen in other teams, their approach is very different. So the majority of the teams are trying to generate most of the downforce with this part of the front wing right here, and then they are trying to use this part, such as Alpine are doing, in order to generate some outwash around the front wheels. But what I just think that it's very interesting is the way in which Alpine are doing it. So they seem to have a pretty big opening right here in order to lead the air cleanly to the floor, but this is definitely sacrificing some of that downforce potential that the front wing could have, and they are definitely not running this front wing to legality. Now this seems to be a very interesting concept from Alpine, because unlike some other teams that are trying to generate as much downforce with the front wing as possible and running up to legality, Alpine isn't trying to do that, so their aero approach is very interesting, and we will have to see through Barcelona if they don't show up with a lot of front wings looking more like this shape right here, in order to preserve the same kind of outwash but to produce more downforce around the front wing. Now another very interesting detail that you can see here around the front wing is that this bottom plane of the front wing is actually hanging much further down than the rest of the front wing. Now what this is trying to do from an aerodynamic standpoint is to channel the air cleanly to those venturi tunnels, and this is an approach that we have seen from other teams in 2022, but with the Alpine this bottom plane seems to be hanging lower than with other teams. So this front wing is definitely not conventional for 2022 standards, and it will be very interesting to see it evolve over the 2022 season. Okay, so now moving up from the front wing, there's also another very interesting detail around the side pods of the brand new A522. So unlike in 2021 where you had the barge board section right here, that's all banned for 2022. But teams also want a way to keep the airflow in this region right here and not allow all of the airflow to just go to the outside of the car. And what Alpine has done, and just as Craig Scarborough has pointed out, is use this large floor edge vane. So this is another section that's legal for the 2022 cars, and unlike the complex structures of the 2021 barge boards, this is just a big triangle that's around here, and what this will do is try to keep the wheel wake outside of the car, so it tries to steer the wheel wake to the outside of the car and then steer that clean air that comes from the front wing into the floor right here and into this undercut. So this is not one of the biggest undercuts that we have seen, but this is definitely one of the most aggressive ways to put air in the undercut and to keep the wheel wake outside of the undercut that we have seen so far. So this is very interesting for the Alpine, and I'm wondering if we are going to see other teams use this large floor edge vane on the front of the car, because this seems like a very good way to keep the wake of the wheels outside of the car and to keep that undercut high flow, high speed air in the inboard part of the car, which is what all of the teams want to do. Now, just like the Ferrari that we have seen, Alpine has opted out to go with a pretty straight outside part of the side pod right here, so this will minimize the undercut effect a little bit, but they are trying to follow a little bit more of the AlphaTauri approach, where the airflow will actually follow this BWT sponsorship. You can see it better from this angle right here, where the side pod just comes down until it touches the floor. Teams are trying to create this effect right here. So the air is going to follow this side pod shape and then it's going to merge with the floor, and this is very high speed air. So this is very high energy, high speed air, and it will be air that will be pretty much undisturbed because of the way in which the airflow structures work. And what this air will do once it reaches this kind of diffuser region right here is that it will be shot up to the beam wing, which is the kind of small wing that you can see right here in these pictures that's below the rear wing, in order to produce extra downforce. But what having high speed air here will do is it will mean it will actually pull the air from the floor and make the floor work much harder and increase the efficiency of the diffuser much more. Now, we have seen this kind of concept in other teams like AlphaTauri and in a more aggressive shape with Williams and Mercedes, so it's very interesting to see that a lot of teams are opting to have this design of side pod, whereas they are not favoring the same kind of approach as Aston Martin is with their big floor undercut right here. So you can see that the Alpine A522 still has a pretty big undercut, but not as big as some of the other teams such as the Aston Martin. And what you can also see from this picture is that just like in 2021, the Renault power unit is still using this big airbox right here in order to cool the engine from the top. So unlike most other teams which are trying to use the side pods to cool the engine, Alpine is still using this big airbox right here in order to draw fresh air to cool the engine, and that means that they have radiators on the top of the engine in this top portion right here. Now, this is a very different approach to cooling from all other teams, because you don't really want to have a lot of components in this region right here such as Alpine has, because you need to remember that teams want the center of gravity of the car to be as low as possible, and by cooling the car in this top portion you are raising the center of gravity, which will mean that the car will be less easy to control. Now, Craig Scarborough also saw this, and he also saw that there is a center line cooling, but it's actually slimmer than in 2021. And if you remember in 2021, when you saw the car from this angle, you had this very big bulge of a car, whereas in 2022 it seems to be a little more sculptured. So this is certainly a very good sign for the Renault power unit, but it's very interesting to see that Renault is still using that center line cooling approach, unlike some other power unit manufacturers. And just like what we have seen with a lot of other teams, they are using this kind of cooling louver setup. So unlike most other teams except Ferrari, they are using two different cooling louver sections right here. So what this tells me is that this cooling louver right here is probably trying to dissipate the heat that comes from the radiators inside of the side pod, whereas this cooling louver right here on the back is probably used to dissipate the air that's coming in through that big airbox on the top. So definitely a very interesting cooling setup, and it's a lot similar to what we are seeing with the Ferrari, but with a lot less crazy shapes around the side pod. So definitely a very interesting approach from the A522. But from what I have seen so far in this car, there's nothing here that shows me a lot of innovation and a lot of crazy ideas in the 2022 car. They are just trying to stick to what they know works, and they are trying to make an evolution of the 2021 car in a way in which they can control most of the parameters and develop a safe car. Now, I think that this kind of design approach is very good for the team and for Alpine, but I think that Alpine, unlike Mercedes and Ferrari, is being more conservative with their design approach in order to make a safe car that they know works, but that probably doesn't have the same top performance as the Mercedes or the Ferrari. So I expect to see Alpine risking a little bit more with their car design over the next couple of years if they really want to get to the top and compete with the big teams. So that's been it for my analysis of the brand new Alpine A522, definitely one of the more striking cars that we have seen when it comes to the livery and one of my favorite liveries, but also a car that doesn't take a lot of risk in their design approach, so I'm really hoping that they are going to bring more parts to the Barcelona test. But if you guys enjoyed this analysis of the brand new Alpine, you can check out this playlist right here with all of my coverage on all the 2022 cars. I think you guys will enjoy it if you enjoyed this video. So just once more before I go, I really want to thank you for helping me hit 1000 subscribers and for all your support during this car launch series. It's been really an amazing time to be here on YouTube, and we still got one more car to go with the real RB18. So that's been it for this video. I really hope you guys enjoyed, and if you did, please don't forget to like and subscribe, it helps out a lot. And I will see you later this week with my coverage of the Barcelona tests. Goodbye!